Hey, this is Mrs. Meckins, and after several days of working on making inferences, this is the last lesson in the skills series. We've worked on inferring, the verb version, remember? And inferring means that you can collect details, relevant details from the text, start to group them, put them together based on patterns, relationships. Remember those phrases, this reminds me of, these go together because when you have this, it usually means, and we use our thinking voice to start to group the details, the clues we collected from the text. This combination of text clues plus our thinking is what's going to be able to reveal an inference to us. We've been working on this concept of inferring. And the last lesson, we took it one step further and said, not only can readers make the inference, they can explain it in writing. Well, in this lesson, we're going to bring it all together. This is game day, people. This is game day. Because we just read a short passage and we made an inference. And then in another lesson, we went back to that passage and we wrote the response. But in the real world, you got to be able to read the passage, make the inference, and write the response all in one sitting. That's this lesson. We got to be able to bring it all together. So using what we know, not only about the reader making the inference, but also the reader writing his response, leading with the inference, supported by evidence, the details that were most helpful, and it has to be at least two pieces of evidence. Let me show you what this all together would look, feel like, sound like. All right, so I'm going to go through the whole process, putting together all the pieces that we've learned, and then you're going to do it. Okay, so here we go. On the screen, I'm going to start by just reading a passage. He wears a uniform. He walks around hallways and into rooms. He checks doorknobs to see if some rooms are locked. He listens carefully to sounds. He carries a flashlight and a two-way radio. What is his occupation? Knowing that the passage is super easy, we're just, again, working on the beginnings of making an inference and communicating it in writing. But that said, the first thing I have to do is collect the details and put them on Miss Linder's silhouette head. So looking back at the passage, I think what words, what phrases might help me figure out what his occupation is, what his job is. He wears a uniform. Okay, well, the fact that he doesn't get to pick whatever he wants to wear, and it's not a suit, that's going to become important, I'm sure. He walks around hallways and into rooms. All right, so he walks, where hallways, and into rooms. These are not my words. These are the author's details. I'm writing them in green because my reading voice is noticing them. He checks doorknobs to see if some rooms are locked. All right, so he's checking doorknobs. He's turning them, twisting them, seeing if they open and if they should or shouldn't. He listens carefully to sounds. So this idea of, oh, that was my room's locked. Checks doorknobs, see if rooms are locked. He's listening to sounds, and he carries both a flashlight and a two-way radio. Okay, it's a short passage, but my job now is to infer what his occupation is, what his job is. All right, I'm doing this all in one sitting now. Okay, so as I see this idea of uniform, the first thought I have is that it's something official. All right, because if you have a uniform, then you stand out, you look different, and just this idea that you're not wearing everyday clothes. So he has some kind of official capacity. He's not just a customer somewhere. Okay, then when I look and I see that he walks hallways and rooms, I'm thinking, okay, he's patrolling. He's, if he's just walking around, he's like supervising, he's like overseeing, he's just watching things. And so I wrote patrols, supervises. I don't know, that's kind of catching me a little bit. This idea that he checks the doorknobs and the rooms, see if they're locked, and this idea that he listens for sounds, all of this has me thinking that he's making sure everything's safe, secure, protected. So I wrote security there. Let me make sure this stays outside the silhouette, but it goes with that grouping in my mind. I'm grouping my details. Okay, and then I see flashlight here, and I see two-way radio, and these are must be some of the tools of his job, his trade. So these two tools and his uniform kind of have me thinking that, you know, these are the tools and in his official capacity that he might need to use. Okay, so I've done the initial detail collection. I've made some groupings. Now I look only at the yellow, only at my thinking, and I try to answer the question based on the thoughts I've had. So he's an official of some kind who patrols and supervises, and his main focus is to make sure things are secure. So I'm thinking he's a security guard. All right. So in one sitting, I read, I collected details, I grouped them, and I came up with an inference, but I'm still not done because readers can also explain their thinking and writing all in the same sitting. So what do I have to do now? I have to write a response, a 3-sentence response. And I've learned that the first sentence of every response about reading leads with the inference. So that will be my first sentence. Then I've got to figure out which groups of details were most helpful. This is what's going to help provide me the evidence I include in my response. And so I'm looking for the details that were most helpful. So for me, that means looking back at each of the green, but really studying my yellow thoughts. That's what's going to tell me how helpful it was. So security was pretty big. That was pretty big because a security guard, that he guards security, that was a pretty big thought. So this idea that he's checking that rooms are locked if they're supposed to be, listening for sounds and checking doorknobs. Remember, that's all one piece of evidence. Oh, it's a handful of words, but it all falls under the same type of evidence. So that will be one. Now, I need to have at least two. So I'm going to look at two-way radio, flashlight, uniform. Okay, well, he's an official, but that's pretty broad. Let me see what this one says. He's patrolling and supervising because he walks hallways and rooms. Okay, I think that piece is probably more specific for someone who is a security guard because a lot of people wear uniforms. A lot of different occupations need flashlights and use radios. So that isn't specific enough. I'm thinking this one's more helpful. So this is going to be my second detail that I'll reference as evidence. Okay, so now I just have to turn it into sentences. How many sentences? Boom, boom, boom. 3. That's what I got to do. So I grab my marker and I review the question. What is his occupation? I want to use some of those words in my response, and I want to, in the same sentence, answer the question. So I will write something like, his occupation is as a security guard. Sentence number 1, done. But that's a topic sentence with a claim, an opinion. That was my conclusion, my inference. So like all good writers, I have to back it up with supporting evidence, right? Supporting details, in this case, specifically evidence. I need to use one of those sentence starters we all come to just love, something like, according to the passage, or the text states. I'll use according to the passage. Now I got to figure out how to weave some of these words, not just one of them. I need multiple because they were all helpful to me. So according to the passage, he checks doorknobs, locks rooms, and listens for sounds. It's a meaty sentence with a lot of author words. According to the passage, he checks doorknobs, Remember, when it's not my word, but it's the author's, I want to put it in quotes. Checks doorknobs. We'll go ahead and leave that off for right now. Locks rooms. Okay. And what's the other one? Oh, listens for sounds. All right. Second sentence done. Now I need to start my second evidence sentence, but my third and final for now sentence with another sentence starter. I used according to the passage. Let's mix it up. The author also stated walks, hallways, and rooms. I got to use that and weave it into this. The author also stated he walks, hallways, and rooms. Again, not my words. Came from the text. I want to quote it just to add a little ammo. This is bringing it all together on game day, you guys. This is read a passage, make an inference, write your thinking in sentences. All right, you know what time it is, right? It's your turn. I'm going to get our next passage ready. And in order to be ready for you to do the thinking and then the writing, I need to clean off my silhouette head here, and I need to change my chart paper. So while I'm changing my chart paper, you go ahead and read the passage silently to yourself. See if you can't start to figure out which clues do you think will be important. Okay, even if you know the answer right now, I don't want the inference because we need to first figure out what details you could use. We need to know what words the author said because we're going to have to write them down anyway. So let's start with those. Let's look at this passage and identify the words you think might be most helpful. He slammed his phone down on the counter. He walks around the room, tapping his finger to his forehead and moaning. Picking up his phone, he taps in several combinations of numbers. The screen lights up with a padlock icon. Again, he slams his phone to the counter. What happened? All right. Holler out a couple of keywords, phrases. Which ones? Which ones do you think? You better notice this. You better notice this. Take note of that one. All right. So slamming the phone on the counter. What's the next one you would say? Yeah, you better notice this. Okay, tapping his finger to his forehead, maybe. Okay, walking around the room. What else? All right, this idea that he's moaning. What else? Several combinations of numbers. Anything else? Oh, the padlock icon on the screen. Got it. Okay. Anything else? Slams the phone again? Got it. All right. Slams the phone down again. Okay. So we're trying to figure out what happened. All right. So now you might know what happened. I want to know, how do you know that you're right? I want to know which details you would put together. When you see one detail, what does it make you think of? Or when you see two or three details, what do they make you think of? Would you put any together, or are you having any thoughts? How about this whole slamming the phone on the counter and then slamming it again? What's that telling you? Your thinking voice tells you he's, okay, angry, furious, upset, frustrated. All those would be options. What else? What's another detail combination you think is relevant? If I put walks around the room and tapping his finger. Moaning, tapping his finger, walking around the room. Okay, so pacing, that's a good word. Pacing. What else? Okay, how would you describe him? What's the tapping? He's trying to remember. He's thinking. He's trying to recall something. All right, possibly. So thinking while pacing, got it. Okay, so let's talk about this. He's tapping numbers. Well, it is a phone, right? So what are the numbers? Let me say it another way. What could be the numbers? Could be a phone number, calculator, password. Any others? Okay, those are all good theories. Let's add that. Okay, so we're thinking the numbers could represent a lot of things. We don't know. All right, and then we see this padlock icon. What does a padlock tell you? And what does a padlock on a screen tell you? Okay, yeah, some kind of security, some kind of lock, right? Some kind of password. Okay, so here we go, you guys. The question is, what happened? What happened? What happened to cause him to think and pace and moan and be so angry and upset? It has something to do with security and a lock and numbers. What's going on? He forgot his password and is now locked out of his own phone. That ever happened to you? Oh, so frustrating. So frustrating. You just did it, but you're only halfway there because readers make inferences, but bam, and then they can explain them in writing. What will be your first sentence in your written response? Yes, by golly, it's going to be the inference. That's going to be your first sentence, right? All right, now, before we start writing it, let's figure out what your two pieces of evidence will be. So you're looking for what kinds of details? Helpful details. And can you just pull one sticky note? Not if it's grouped. Right, okay, so I'll just sit here for a minute. You decide which grouping or two would you use? Most helpful. Okay, some of us are thinking that whole padlock icon. It's like he's locked out, lock, Miss Meckens. That's so obvious. Okay, all right, I'll put it up there. Okay, and that didn't have any others with it, so that'll be its own piece of evidence. Okay, the fact that he's walking around moaning, thinking, he could be doing that, trying to figure out his algebra, right? He could do that trying to find his house key, right? Slams his phone down. It's about the phone. Why wouldn't you? Why would you not choose that one? He slams his phone down. That wasn't helpful? Well, it's kind of helpful, but he could be mad at his girlfriend, could be mad at his parents. He might have just got fired from his part-time job. He could be angry, upset, and slam his phone for a lot of reasons. The numbers. Yeah, phone numbers, but you pair the password, the numbers for password with the lock issue, the padlock. I think you're right. I think that's your best option. All right. So how many sentences are you writing? Yep, 3. All right. So look back at the question. Look at your inference, and you tell me, how would you write the first sentence? Yeah, you might just use most of this, right? What happened? He was locked out of his phone because he forgot his password. Got it. He was locked out of his own phone, poor fella. Because, I'll go abbreviation, all right? We know we don't normally do that. Because he forgot his password. Oh, poor fella. Let's use that over here. Password, period. This is the inference. We led with the inference. You're not done. You now need a sentence starter that says, I'm about to give you some evidence. What do you want it to be? We can say the text states. We can say according to the passage. We can say the author. All right, we'll just go with according to the passage. What? According to the passage. How are you going to phrase it? His screen lit up with the padlock icon. Yeah, we don't have to make this hard, you guys. According to the passage, his screen lit up with a padlock icon. Okay, now wait a minute. Are you done with that sentence? Well, yeah, it's a sentences, but what do you got to do to the author words? Right. So which words are you going to put a quote around? Screen. Screen lit, maybe. I don't remember if lit was on there. We better be careful of that. With a padlock icon. We know that one. All right, you got 2 down, 1 to go. Come on now. We need a sentence starter. A sentence starter that tells us, hey, we are about to give another piece of evidence. Okay, the text also states. Sounds good to me. The text also states. How are you going to say it? He tapped several combinations of numbers. Got it. Where are you putting your quotes? Oops. Where are you putting your quotes? Look back at the passage. It's on the screen. Combinations of numbers. Anything else? Yeah, we changed it to tapped, but tap, yeah. Okay, good. You guys, you just did it. What this whole lesson series was about was reading a passage where authors imply an idea. They don't say it, they just give you a lot of details and assume you're going to do the work and figure it out. When you figure it out, it's called an inference. And in this series, you learned we got to collect the details, figure out how they go together, think about our thinking in order to figure out the inference. And not only are you smart enough to make an inference, you can explain it in writing. All right, if you were in Mrs. Smecken's class, this is what you would do now. I have 2 more short passages and another silhouette head. You are going to get game day ready right here. We're going to bring it all together. Okay, again, you can draw 2 silhouettes. You can trace the silhouette twice. You can print it off twice. But what I want you to do is read this passage and figure out his occupation first on the silhouette head, then write the response. Boom, all in one sitting. Okay, the 3-sentence response. Then read this passage and the question, collect the details, figure out the inference, and write the response all in one sitting. All right, this is what readers do. If you were in Mrs. Smecken's class, you would do both passages with a short response to each. But your teacher might have a better idea.